All right, college football playoff rankings come out, and well, Georgia wasn't number one, which we thought that wasn't going to be the case. At least we thought on this show here, A to Z. And we also thought that Georgia would be number two, and that also wasn't the case. Thanks so much, College Football Playoff Ranking Committee, for ruining what should have been 1 versus 2. Now it's just 1 versus 3. Just doesn't have the same juice. Anyway, not that it really matters. The little number next to the team doesn't really matter. It's going to be a big game regardless. But Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Michigan, Alabama, 5-6, TCU, Oregon, USC, LSU, 8, 9, and 10. Or 7, 8, 9, and 10, rather. Don't really have a problem with the top 10 teams. I have a problem with the order. Again, I'll say this much. I think Clemson being 4 is just insane. Like the idea that Georgia got ranked less than Tennessee because of their lack of a signature win. And you put Clemson above Michigan and TCU? Like TCU is 4 solid wins. TCU has 4 wins on their schedule that are as good, if not better, than the best wins for Clemson. They just do. Some massive disrespect to TCU, if you ask me. They went on a run, guys, and people don't know this because they don't watch Big 12 football, but TCU went on a run of beating 4 straight top 15 opponents. That ain't easy. That ain't easy. That's the stuff that like Alabama would do in the SEC West back when it was legit. So anyway, again, I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about any of this. And the only reason I'm not going to, and the only reason why I say I'm not going to is simply because you're going to see this stuff work itself out as we've figured out. Tennessee and Georgia will work itself out. Ohio State, Michigan will work itself out. Again, TCU, Oregon, USC, all those teams have right in front of them what they need to have in front of them to make a run. But by Clemson being 4, I think they are telling you still that undefeated conference champ is going to get in. Because they may be the only one with a 0 next to their name, and that's going to put them ahead of where they should be. I don't know why you guys get so infatuated with that 0 in the loss column. Again, I'm not underscoring how hard it is to win every single game that you play during the regular season and your conference tournament. I'm not underestimating that at all. What I'm saying is that you have to kind of you have to peel back the layers a little bit. You have to look a little bit deeper than what you see to truly understand what you're seeing. And here's the thing, and I have to ask around about this. The fact that Georgia's an 8.5-point favorite, I got to know if that this is the biggest underdog that a number 1 team in the country has ever been. I would have to assume that it is. Like I would have to assume that that the team that is number 1 would never be an 8.5-point underdog, but they are, and here we are. So it's interesting to see how that's going to shake out. I thought this was interesting too. That on The Athletic, they wrote a column about if Vegas were to make the rankings for the college football playoff and how they would do it. They actually done this exercise for a couple of years, and I only say this because again, Vegas has access to hordes of information that not a lot of people do, and in that, that's how they determine what lines are and everything else. And the College Football Playoff Committee actually has access to a lot of the same information, but it's always a good determinant to see who Vegas thinks is a favorite, who is better than whom, and it'll tell you a lot about where teams are. Now, the Las Vegas College Football Playoff top 10 rankings have Georgia at 1, Ohio State at 2, Alabama at 3, and I'll pause on Alabama for a second. Part of the reason why Alabama is at 3 is because of the publicly bet nature of that team. It's not necessarily there's a numbers game or some sort of distinct statistical advantage Alabama has because they're so publicly bet. If they make them lower and make them underdog, it becomes a liability. You have to understand that. So I think that's part of it. But Tennessee is at 4, Michigan at 5, Clemson at 6, Oregon at 7. What did I tell you guys? TCU at 8, LSU at 9, and USC at 10. I think that, to me, I think with the exception again of Clemson, but again, Clemson is also only is a very publicly bet team, and um, they have not been laying a lot of big spreads this year against bad teams. They have against teams that are of their ilk, the Florida States, the NC States. They have been uh, very short numbers, and they're only giving 2.5 points to Notre Dame this weekend, which is a interesting number. It's also probably a trap spread, but that's a whole different conversation for a different day. Not a game that I want to get involved in. Period. But it's interesting to see how Clemson is positioned right now in the college football playoff, and where they are and what they are thought of. But as I said, let's wait a couple weeks. You're going to get over the next couple of weeks, some major sort of matchups we talked about. Obviously, this week and next week, you'll get some other big time matchups that could help decide this whole thing. Um, you know, Washington and Oregon are going to play. Will Oregon get tripped up? Who knows? You know, Tennessee has an easy path the rest of the way out. Ole Miss and Alabama are going to play each other still. That one could have a lot of impact. So TCU is going to play Texas. That one could have a lot of impact. That one's in Austin, by the way, at UT. So there's a lot left to be decided. So I'm not going to get too crazy about the first college football playoff rankings because we've got another 3 or 4 weeks of this that are really more determinant than what we've seen coming out of the first ranking. All right, we got to get to shovels of wisdom, and then we'll get to the Hawks. Big game tonight against the Knicks. Some World Series stuff as well. More baseball news and Georgia, Tennessee, Falcons, Chargers, all coming up. First, the word to remind you guys that I want to thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen every single day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, which is awesome. It's like second only to the take of the day you get right here. But it is the Locked On Sports Today podcast, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.